I'm sure we've all heard about how the Surgeon General ultimately warned that parenting is bad for your health. So, how do we as parents fix that? Because if we're already there, like, we're going to have to fix it. There's no opting out. As a side note, it's pretty subjective. Like, all of the data on it is subjective. It's people's experiences. But what people's experiences tell me is that people need support and help through those things. Now, we are not going to be able to fix all of the infrastructure that's not supporting parenting. We are not going to be able to fix all of the problems in this world. But what we can fix is what happens under our own roof. So let's think about some things that we can tangibly implement into our lives and then worry about the broader problems later. Now, there's two different parts of parenting that we should address when it comes to this. One is the tactical parenting, the day-to-day combat of parenting. Cooking the stuff, taking care of the kids, making sure people get to hear, making sure that school gets done, all of those kinds of things. That's the tactical side. But then there's also the emotional and the mental side, which is a lot of unpacking any of the traumas that have gone on in your life to make sure you don't pass it to the next generation. Making sure that your children's mental health has the safeguards around it, making sure that you have community around you. That is the mental side of it. And both of those are very important, but they really deserve their own discussion points. And since we're already talking about it, let's finish talking about the emotional aspect, because this is really where we can carry the heaviest thing. And I think ultimately a lot of the turmoil that people are feeling in this is because of this lack of support, feeling like you're doing it all yourself. But I will say that a lot of you right now, you're generation one in your family. You're the person in your family that looked behind you on your tree and said, it stops with me. That means you are getting rid of a lot of the bad habits. That means you are saying no more. My children are not going to experience that kind of lack of boundaries, which means that you are implementing boundaries for the first time in something that you've never learned. You're reading books. You're understanding who you are, where you came from, how to navigate strengths and weaknesses. That's a lot of work, and that's a lot of emotional weight to be able to carry around. So give yourself some grace. That's hard to go through. It's worth it, but it is going to say this is kind of miserable because you're doing it at the same time that you're doing it in yourself. You're reparenting yourself while parenting your child. That's tricky, and each one of our children are going to teach us something different about ourselves. They are little mirrors that reflect back components of ourselves that need to be improved, and only in us improving ourselves are we able to help them navigate themselves. Their trials and tribulations and faults are actually great ways for us to be able to see, hey, I need to fix that in me so that I'm able to help you. And if you want to read more on this, you want to read Gabor Mate, you want to read John Bradshaw, you want to read anything about that more inner child work, reparenting yourself, understanding ultimately just what healthy existing is like, finding a healthy foundation in you, and then helping your children lay that healthy foundation. And if you already have children walking around, then it's time for you to really dig down deep into that. If you don't, then there's a benefit because you can do a lot of that work before they're there. But just know, when kids pop up, things will pop up. Things that you didn't even think you had to navigate until there's a tiny human reflecting back part of you that you're like, oh, I do have to navigate that. Sweet. Now let's talk about the tactical side. How do you simplify your life just to be able to make it a little bit more manageable and a little bit more pleasant? The principles you're going to want to navigate are things like simplifying the processes in which you do things, or simplifying the amount of things you have in your home so that it's easier to manage. It gives you more time back. Making sure that you're not living in the shadow of somebody else's expectations. I don't want to live on somebody else's schedule. I want to live on the schedule that works for my family, and that's going to look different. Just because things look different than how somebody else does it doesn't mean either of you are wrong, because your principle is, how do I thrive on the amount of time that I've given with the tasks that I need to do? We're living on principles, not rules, and that's really, really, really critical. Now, you're going to see some bleed over from what we just talked about on things that you were raised and things that you have to unpack, because you're going to think a lot like, well, when I was raised, this is how we did it, or when I was growing up, this is how we did it. But that doesn't mean how you grew up was right, and it also doesn't mean how you grew up was wrong. It just means that how you grew up might not work for where you're living now, because remember, the world is different now. Your life is different now. It's not like you live in the exact same world that your parents did, with the exact same finances, with the exact same job, with the exact same schedule, the exact same kids. You have to change what you were raised in order to be able to accommodate your family now, or you have to eliminate the things that you were raised in order to accommodate what you're doing now. So there is some bleed over. That's why the emotional component of this is very important. However, when you are looking at your life, You want to look for proficiency. You don't want to make shortcuts, but you do want to make sure that the things that you're doing it well, that you're doing it succinctly, that you're making sure that things are just moving smoothly. You're going to have days that you're completely overwhelmed. You're going to have days that you're like, how am I going to be able to navigate this? You're going to have days that you're like, why is everyone losing their mind? You're going to have days that you lose your cool because you didn't sleep well or you didn't get the right nutrition. All of those things are going to need to be part of what your plan is each day, because you're going to be navigating your own attitude, your kids' attitudes. So you just need to look at what your life is and see, where can I simplify this? Where can I make this a little bit more manageable? So let's say that your child is very active in a sport. Insert whatever sport that is here. Your child is really good at this sport. Now, stop and take a look at that child and say, is this child going to be professional in that sport? If that child is going to be professional in that sport, then you're going to say, all right, well, that ranks higher than some of the other things that we are going to do and be able to devote our time to, which means we're going to have to cut some corners around how we do things at the house, whether that is simplifying your meal plan, making sure that you are able to have a better cleaning schedule, making sure whatever else is going to happen to make sure that's running smoothly so that you can devote more time over here. Or let's say that that child is not going to be professional in that sport, but they really, really enjoy it. Well, how can you switch things around so that they are able to still do that because they enjoy it, but you know that it's not worth the huge investment that is going to draw away from what you're doing elsewhere? So you're going to look for something that is more recreational, something that is still going to give them the fun, the skill set, but like you're not training for, I don't know, the Olympics or the equestrian competitions or whatever else it is. You are just looking to be able to enjoy that. Now, take that principle and overlay it to everything that you do, everything your kids do, every activity that you could possibly think of that you have, and go, all right, is this something that we need to do more diligently, or is this something that we need to do more recreationally? Is this something that we can eliminate from a scheduled type of routine? Like, let's say, do you need to do ice skating lessons, or can you do open skate at the skating rink? Which one is really going to matter? And sometimes it's a cost benefit, sometimes it's, a time management. There are a million different ways, well, for lack of better terms, to skin a cat. So what is the way that is going to be able to function in your family more and give you a little bit more space to make sure you're maintaining yourself so that you're not miserable while raising your children? And the big thing that I learned in that study is I think it was said that 48% of parents feel like they are either losing themselves or they're miserable in parenting or whatever. But that means 52% don't feel like that. That means there's people out there in your circle that aren't feeling like that 48% and are feeling those 52. What are they doing differently? Go talk to them. Go find them. Go start having conversations with people who are thriving within your community and see if maybe you can glean some tips from them. There's wisdom within our parenting community, and that is how we get our tribe back. That is how we go and find our tribe. Go find the 52% that actually feel like they're doing okay. Look, we need to manage our expectations when it comes to parenting, because you have to realize we are domesticating feral humans. These are feral humans who do not know how to exist in the world, and we are trying to help make sure that they can thrive, while at the same time undoing any of the feralness inside of us, or maybe allowing some of the feralness to shine. Either way, this is not an easy thing, and we need to manage our expectations towards that and say what we're doing is hard. But hard doesn't mean bad. Hard can mean it's a challenge, and we are able to rise to that occasion. And if you made it this long, congratulations. This is one of the longest TikToks I think I've done. But I think this is a really important subject, and I hope that maybe something in here you can glean from. We're all in this together. We want this world to be a better place, and I think it's really important to leave the world better than we found it. So how are you able to do that in your own home today? And then we'll conquer the world together later. But let's just manage here for right now. Like you and me here. Let's manage this together. And if we manage this well enough, out there doesn't even matter.